It is my pleasure to welcome you to our 2020 Unleash Imagination, Shape the Future event. Given the times this year, we are producing it differently. For example, our three outstanding awardees, upon receipt of their awards, recorded their remarks. I do hope you've had a chance to view them because they're fascinating. If not, seek them out on our website after our conversation. I'm sure you'll want to after having spent an hour with them. I hope too that you've had a chance to bid on the auction of the trio of books by our awardees, each signed by the author. I'm sure that you and or some other special person will find them a wonderful gift for the holiday. Sir Arthur C. Clarke was prescient about technological and scientific developments that were realized decades later. He was fascinated by exploration of the universe, and he cared profoundly about planet Earth and about the well-being of humanity. He believed that imagination combined with science, technology, and the arts was essential to our future survival. The Clarke Foundation believes, as did Sir Arthur, that we need big, fresh ideas to address today's and tomorrow's challenges. Doing this requires future thinking from all of us. It requires unleashing imagination in how we steer to a better future. These big ideas gain power and effectiveness through intergenerational communication and collaboration. We have many young people involved behind the screen in today's programs. Let me thank the youth partners that we have and give a special welcome to the young people who are here from Challenger Center, Chief Science Officers, the Kid Museum, and from our sister organization, the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination at University of California, San Diego. So now, for the main event. Sir Arthur challenged us by saying the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the realm of the impossible. That call to use the power of our imagination to address the world's seemingly intractable challenges is what drives the Clarke Foundation. Imagination, of course, is not a single phenomenon, but captures a range of creative responses to human experience. We recognize those qualities in our outstanding awardees who are accomplished and creative leaders from the worlds of business, science, technology, and the arts, whose imaginations have taken them into the realm of the impossible to change our world for the better. We are also privileged today to have Katie Coleman moderate the conversation and to challenge our Lifetime Award winner, Bill Draper, recipient of the Imagination and Service to Society Award winner, Ted Chiang, and Dr. Fabiola Gianotti on behalf of CERN, the awardee for innovation. We hope that they will offer their insights into how we might embrace imagination in the face of the trifecta of crises, pandemics, climate change, and social inequity, and how we might magnify the power of fresh ideas by working across generations. Again, you'll be able to learn more about each of our outstanding awardees by viewing their videos and reading the program. So I now conclude my remarks by introducing Katie Coleman, our moderator. Katie is an astronaut, musician, public speaker, mom, terrific person, and much more. She is passionate about the power of imagination. So let's now turn to the Clarke conversation on imagination, crises, and renewal, and to Katie, Bill, Ted, and Fabiola. So, take it away, Katie.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here today with the 2020 Arthur C. Clarke Foundation awardees for what we're calling the Clarke Conversation. Now, you're going to find detailed bios in that electronic program, which is really awesome to read through. And also, I really encourage you, if you haven't already, to watch the videos, which are very personal and I think fascinating conversations with each of our awardees. So I'm just going to give a very short introduction to all of them, and we will get started. So our Lifetime Achievement awardee is William Draper, and we're calling him Bill because that seems to be what everybody calls him. He's a venture capitalist who's pivotal in the development of Silicon Valley, a prominent diplomat and administrator of the UN Development Program. He oversaw over 10,000 international aid projects in that series of jobs there. I know in trying to learn about people and understand what they're like and get so you can moderate a conversation, I found that I needed to reach out to my own network. And Bill, I can tell you who said this later, but I wanted to know more because, I just wanted to understand what somebody I knew, really, really thought. And that person said, I know Bill Draper, and everything I know about him suggests that he is a deeply thoughtful guy. He has had amazing women partners and colleagues who he clearly respects, celebrates, engages with as equals. I don't know more broadly about his diversity-related interactions, but I have to think that he's pretty amazing there too. I think many folks think of him as a senior statesman of venture and social venture. So, Bill, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here with you. I'm also I'm a bit in awe of you having gone to outer space, so you know a lot more about not only the world, but space. I'm really thrilled to be with you.
Well, thank you. I think, we each have our own perspective, and they're all important. The second award is the Innovation Award, and that goes to CERN. And accepting on behalf of CERN, and CERN is the European Organization for Nuclear Research. It's an incubator of the World Wide Web, originator of the World Wide Web, and the world's largest particle physics laboratory. Accepting on behalf of CERN is Dr. Fabiola Giannotti. She's the Director General and an acclaimed physicist known for her work on the Higgs boson particle, and also the recipient of many awards. The one I picked out was the Special Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics in 2013. She's also one of the top 100 most influential women chosen by Forbes magazine not once, but twice, 2013 and 17. Fabiola, welcome and hello.
Thank you, Katie. Very happy to be with you tonight.
And last but certainly not least is the Imagination in Service to Society Award for Ted Chiang. He's a much awarded writer of fiction, and he has Hugos and Nebulas, and one of his stories has been the Stories of Your Life and Others has been translated into 21 languages and is the cornerstone of a movie that you might have heard of called Arrival, which I loved, and actually so many people that I know who are, of course, space people, really just loved the fact that this movie was so much about space, but it was really about people, about all of us, about Earth. And that story, and his story Exhalation, was chosen by the New York Times as one of the 10 best books of 2019. I think it will make you look at all of our realities, especially climate change, with a new lens of possibilities. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks very much. I'm very happy to be here, and feeling kind of humbled to be in the company of such notable persons.
Me too. So that's actually kind of a good segue for me, just a short introduction to our questions themselves. I mean, so here we have an astronaut, we have a venture capitalist, we have a physicist, and a science fiction writer. I think there should be something about going to a bar that comes into this sentence here. But here we're all different in our own ways. And but I believe that our experience has demonstrated that imagination and exploration are at our cores. Ted by creating fictional worlds that give us new ways of seeing our own, Fabiola and CERN by seeking to understand the fundamental particles that make up our universe, and Bill by finding and investing in people and technologies with the potential to solve critical problems around the world. So I think by sharing your unique perspectives, we can take some steps together today, I hope, to move the world forward. Arthur C. Clarke said, I don't pretend to understand, sorry, I'll start again. Arthur C. Clarke said, actually a lot of very cool quotes, but I liked this one for our conversation. I don't pretend we have all the answers, but the questions are certainly worth thinking about. He really understood that humankind's most powerful tool was its future and its imagination. I never had the honor of meeting him, but I think that he would like it that we're here today, sharing our experiences and encouraging others to unleash their imaginations. And with that, I have a question for everyone. I mean, this is both a conversation and a celebration of your achievements as Arthur C. Clarke Award winners. And so I'd like our conversation to inspire others to unleash their imaginations as well. So it's sort of a simple question, and it's whatever you'd like to do with it. We'll start with Fabiola. How has imagination played a role in your work?
Thank you, Katie. And let me first say that CERN is honored to receive the Arthur C. Clarke Award for Innovation, and I'm very pleased to receive it on behalf of CERN. So, you know, clearly imagination, like curiosity and creativity, is the foundation of research. And Einstein used to say, imagination is more important than knowledge. And actually, I got into physics because I was a very curious child, a very imaginative child. I wanted to understand how things work. And if you want, my ambition, quite a big one, was to one day, I was a dreamer, one day to contribute to improving our understanding of the universe. So since my early age, I was really imaginative and I was a dreamer. Like Sir Arthur Clarke, he was a dreamer, he was a futurist, he was an optimist. So I think these are very, very important elements for my work and for my research.
Ted, clearly imagination drives your writing. And you create imaginary worlds in a way that I think helps illuminate the world that we see. And you really do this in surprising and thought-provoking ways. So I'm interested in what role imagination plays in the larger part of your work, because of course, I guess if you're a writer, you get to imagine new things every day.
Well, I guess I feel like I should just say that when I was a kid, I think I was probably a lot like what Fabiola described her childhood as like, because I dreamed of being a physicist. I wanted to become an astrophysicist as an adult, but I always thought I would write science fiction on the side. I became interested in both science and science fiction at around the same time, because I think both of them had this, they really fired up my imagination. I was really sort of almost endlessly excited by both of them. And so I always wanted both of them to be part of my life. And, over time, some things about my path changed, and I wound up not going into physics. But the science fiction did stick around, and I although sometimes I still sort of think longingly of the possibilities of like if I had stuck with physics, because there is something just really, really appealing to me about that line of that career, that line of work as a way of your job is to to think wild thoughts with the goal of understanding more about the universe. That is, I think science fiction does that too. But I suppose I have no regrets that I wound up in science fiction rather than in physics. But I definitely think from time to time, like, oh man, it would have been great to go into physics.
Ted, do you think, I'm just sure of the answer, that your work changes physics? That physics, people who are physicists and chemists, I'll say, since I'm one, that you change their worlds and they find things they might not have found if you hadn't given them different points of view. Has anybody ever told you a story like that? Or Fabiola, do you have any stories like that?
I mean, I've never been told that by any physicist. I did talk to. I did hear from a linguist who she told me that she became a linguist because she read Story of Your Life, and then she wound up becoming the linguistics consultant on the film Arrival. So I thought that was a very sort of neat little, sort of small world kind of anecdote.
That's awesome. So, Bill, the power of imagination and the role that it plays in your work, which I think many people think that it's all about technology, and you're judging, is this the technology that will change the future? And you're looking really at technology, but it seems like imagination plays a role for you.
Oh, there's no question about it. The first thing I would say is I was very lucky to have ended up coming to a place where it's this almost a focus of the world to have imagination all around me. It was Silicon Valley was not known as Silicon Valley when I moved here in 1959, I think. I ended up participating with so many creative minds. I think I didn't ever add it up, but I think I've invested in some 50 different companies, and imagination was not just a part of each company, but there were probably an average of, say, 8 or 10 imaginative people that created the companies, and it was a marvel to watch. I personally can think of just lots of companies that without the imagination, I often say when an entrepreneur, when they ask me what characteristics do you look for in your successful entrepreneurs, and I say, well, there's the quality of being sure of themselves, sure of the where they're going, the strength of character to not quit when they're sort of having problems, and to stick through it, and the imagination to create something that has not been there before. And so it is clear that imagination is one of the very most important parts of a successful entrepreneur.
Bill, I think about things like Skype. I know that you were the first group to basically bring Skype to life. And actually there's a part of your interview that I just adore where Charles Ewald says to you, people think that being an entrepreneur, it's the game of the young. And which, I mean, I think it sounds like it's for everyone. But he asked you when you actually invested in Skype, and you said, well, I think when I was 50, and he laughs and he goes, no, Bill, you were like 75, and you're like, well, I felt like 50. So it seems like there's kind of a, always, right. I don't know, always being young, being imaginative. I often show a picture of my son when he was young, looking at a frog, and he's just, he's so curious. And that curiosity is something that I think never leaves some people, and we have to encourage it in others. Right. And I wanted to thank you personally for Skype, because I've had a commuting marriage and family for 26 years. And inventing Skype probably saved it for us. So I'd like to go on.
I didn't invent it. It's clear that I was just the lucky one that made an investment in it. And Skype was a great thrill for me, because it was so successful and so dynamic that for an organization, any organization, to hear about, well, Draper, what did you do? Well, I heard you back Skype. I say, yeah, I backed them, but I was just lucky. Everybody, gives me credit for Skype, but it was those wonderful entrepreneurs who are imaginative and creative and believed in themselves and believed that they could go and strike into new territory and make an economic success as well. So I don't get any of the I shouldn't get any of the credit, but I am willing to take any credit that people want to give me. But luckily, I was just lucky.
Well, I've got another question for all of you, and I think it's not a simple one. Some of our current global crises, the pandemic, climate change, social inequity, have highlighted and magnified the same systemic inequities that are faced by so many. And I think that when the world is overturned, the way forward often involves a fork in the road, and one path returns us to the status quo, to the world as it was before that upheaval. And many of us long for things to go back the way they were. But a real question is, the other path challenges us to reimagine possibilities and inspires us to build a better future. So I'd like to think that imagination could be harnessed to ensure that renewal means positive change for everyone and not just those who benefited from the previous status quo. Ted, I'd really like to start with you, and just have you start us off.
So there's this famous quote that it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. And when you look at depictions of the future in the popular imagination, there are a lot of end of the world scenarios. We all know the sort of Mad Max hellscape kind of scenario. And yeah, so that's the end of the world, and we all know what it looks like. There are not as many, at least really popular ones in like movies and televisions. There are not many depictions of a future that shows the end of capitalism. Maybe probably the most common one would be Star Trek. Star Trek, depicts a kind of utopian future, and but the thing is that Star Trek is set hundreds of years in the future, and these other end of the world scenarios, they are set very, 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 very close to us. They're set just a few years away. And so I think it's worth asking why is it that why do we see so many versions of the end of the world which seem like they could be just around the corner, and there are relatively few depictions of like a world without capitalism, and if the ones that we do see, they imagine it as being pretty far away. And it is so it feels very, very remote, and we need to be able to imagine some a future where capitalism does not have the same role, and we need to imagine that scenario as being something that we can envision happening sooner, within a period of decades rather than centuries, because because if we don't, then we make the end of the world scenarios more likely. No one wants the end of the world scenarios. We don't we don't see these scenarios because those are things that we want, but yeah, they occupy a large space in our imagination, and if we can get visions of a world without capitalism as is currently practiced, if those can be more widely known, if those become something that people are used to thinking about, they get accustomed to thinking about, and as not as something in some remote future, but as something that maybe could happen in the next few years or decades. That I think that will be a necessary prerequisite for that future coming to pass.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you think in order to really achieve a different kind of future, especially after I'm adding kind of after events, for example, the pandemic, we need to think in bigger steps and really different ones. But I'm curious about why you pick capitalism. What does capitalism mean to you? And I'm thinking about that because I'm thinking about Bill deals in capitalism in terms of, I don't mean to speak for him, but is it because it's the way that the world determines haves and have-nots? Or could you talk a little bit more about that, Ted?
Okay, so if we talk about the specific crises that we're facing, like one is the pandemic, and one of the problems with specifically the United States handling of the pandemic, had to do with in some ways like the fact that the United States kind of fetishizes capitalism and would never imagine, like, say, universal health care or a federally mandated paid sick leave, both of which would have been super helpful during the pandemic. There are there are also arguments that capitalism, with its obsessive focus on efficiency, means that there is no redundancy in the system, and that means that small disruptions can cause the system to break down. A system that is more resilient and has greater redundancies will be less prone to breaking down. And so a more resilient system would not have, broken as badly, under a disturbance like the pandemic. And in terms of I think, and just quickly, in terms of climate change, I think it's pretty clear that climate change is caused by capitalism. That I feel like is just about self-evident. As is
I hear you.
Wealth inequality, the other big problem, also pretty self-evidently a product of capitalism.
Mm-hmm. So, Bill, go ahead.
Let me interject. Capitalism is a reason for success, health, wealth, and a wonderful life that all of us are able to participate in. So I don't want it to go unsaid. I mean, you pointed out appropriately some negatives about capitalism, and doesn't help everybody get to the top, but it is the best system, economic system that we have divined.
So, Bill, in looking at some of the things that you've done, it seems like it's not just about technology and business, it's about people. And in fact, it's about worlds of people that are not usually seen, or that their inventions are not coming to the top. That you're trying to change the balance of who is, who we are seeing in terms of new products, new ideas. And so how could we magnify that as we come out of crises like this? How could we think differently? I mean, you're already thinking differently. And so I'm really looking for what you're doing, how can we magnify that in other places so that it's more balanced, so that we work towards what Ted is talking about?
Right. I think we first of all, I would say that things are working pretty well. So to be pompous enough to say that I would improve the system by some clever program that I might have is crazy. But I would say that things are working well, but we could encourage more independence of independent thinking. And that's what Arthur Clarke is all about, creative, imaginative thinking. And we should encourage that in all forms, and not hold people back because of the system doesn't allow flexibility, imagination, and creativity. So I would say, we're doing very well, I think, in this country, and not so good in Venezuela. So part of that is the management and the ability, one vote, one person, everybody participates, and therefore, as we've seen in this very recent election, the people spoke, and they are ending up with I think, a good leader. And I have not not to get political. I am not that fond of Donald Trump, but I'm really relieved that things went fairly well during his term too. So let's just be thankful for a system that really works, and we. I don't think, I don't. At my age, I probably don't have as much imagination as all of you, but I would say it's a pretty good program we've got, pretty good rules we've got, and I for one am hopeful that it continues for a very long time.
Well, and I think, though, you underestimate a little bit, some of you've been the force of change in that industry. And, when I actually, for example, Google venture capitalist, you'll see, 100 different things on the screen. There's very few things of people, and almost none of them are women. And yet, I look in your organizations, I see very much an emphasis on inclusion, and it's just something that's a part of a way of life for you. Fabiola, I don't want to leave you out of this. Our original question was really, how could we move forward in a better way, given that we are in a period of rebuilding after a crisis, and especially maybe the global aspect of the work that you do at CERN. And how because I think that any solutions that we come to are going to involve a global view, because clearly pandemics, climate change, all these things, they know no borders.
Yeah, you see, Katie, going back to the old normal is simply not an option. And we are living very difficult times with a lot of constraints. There has been a lot of suffering. Many people have lost family and friends. And so all this will be nonsense and would be useless if we could not use this crisis as an opportunity for a better world. And I think that science can also play a leading role in that for three main reasons. The first one is that knowledge is the fuel of progress. And without the ideas and the breakthroughs that come from scientific research, progress sooner or later stagnates. And actually, history shows that often breakthroughs come from fundamental research, because it's the one that is most imaginative and less constrained by the need of delivering a product on the short term. And so it's a blue sky ideas and imagination, curiosity driven. So I would like to give an example, which is also very relevant for today and for the crisis we are in. Take quantum mechanics. It's a big discovery of the last century. But when it was developed and it was, thought of, it was considered completely useless knowledge, because so far away from any practical application. And yet, without quantum mechanics, modern electronics will not exist. And even the electronic microscope that we use to study the virus will not be there. The second point is the one that you mentioned, Katie. So we live in a society that has to face global challenges, and global challenges require global answers. And this means working together. And science can show the way. Why? Because science is universal and unifying. It's universal because it's based on facts and not on opinions. And the laws of nature are the same in China, in the US, and in Italy, and in Switzerland. Is unifying because the thirst for knowledge, if you want, the passion for understanding how things works are aspiration shared by all humanity. And so science has no passport, no gender, no political party. So the place where I work, CERN, is an example of this. CERN attracts some 18,000 scientists from all over the world. More than 110 different nationalities are represented. And some of these scientists come from countries in conflict, and yet here they work together animated by the same passion. And the third point that I would like to mention is that science really shows the best of itself when it is open science. So, data available to everybody. publishing articles in open access journals where you don't have to pay to read, developing open source software and open hardware. I think this is very important for a sustainable society. It's a very powerful tool. Open science and education, accessible to all, are very powerful tools also to reduce inequities. And the gap between the rich and the poor, between the developed countries and developing countries. And you know very well that this gap becomes bigger at every crisis. And this crisis has the potential of increasing that gap. And so education and knowledge are the most, perhaps the greatest things that we can give to people to empower them. So that's why I think that science can play a very important role in the renaissance after the crisis.
Well, I'm hoping so. Thank you, Fabiola. I want to go on. We're about 2/3 of the way. Some would say 3/4, but I'm optimistic. And we don't have a hard cutoff at the hour, but we're trying to aim for that. And we still want to get some questions in. But I do have questions from our chief science officers that I'm going to read. The intergenerational communication and collaboration are a key part of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation's mission, and I think important to Arthur C. Clarke himself. So bringing in new perspectives of new generations of scientists and thinkers, I think, is critical. And I'd like to share questions from 2 young women who are the chief science officers in their schools and in their communities. This is a really neat organization that I really like. It was started just a couple of years ago, and now there are several hundred chief science officers, many in schools in the West, out in Arizona, some other states out there, but actually also around the world. And so we're going to hear from, I'm going to read Shaleigh Clemens and Haley Steuben's questions. One of the things they do in their job as the chief science officer, this is sort of like being the class president, but instead you are the person who's trying to facilitate science communication in your school and actually in your community as well. So Shaleigh Clemens asks, and any of you can answer, what would be some benefits of younger and older generations being imaginative together? And I would add, and how can we create these opportunities and not just hope that they happen? Bill, do you want to start?
Well,
I mean, we don't all have to answer, but whoever would like to answer can just jump in.
I think Fabiola wanted to say something.
Well, I just want to mention that diversity in all its aspects, in terms of gender, age, ethnicity, is a strong asset of humanity. And so, humanity can only develop in a sustainable and a better way if we really work together at all levels and regardless of our origin, age, etc. And in particular, of course, the dialogue between the younger generation and the more senior people is very important. If you have the opportunity to come to CERN in the future after the pandemic, and you came to our restaurant, you will see that it's full of people, and you will see young students having lunch with Nobel Prize winners and with more senior people. I think it's very important we continue to benefit from the experience of the more senior people and the energy and imagination of the younger generation. And I think it's if they could work together in endeavors like, in our case, experiments, of course, or I guess also in big companies, I think it will be very, very good if we could really have them being together and profit from their mutual interaction and exchanges.
Thanks.
And I guess I'd just like to actually just quote Arthur C. Clarke on this topic, because one of the things that he famously said was that when a distinguished but elderly scientist tells you something is possible, he is probably right. But if he tells you something is impossible, he is almost certainly wrong. And so I think that that is that is something for young people to keep in mind. Talking to older people, getting the benefit of their experience I think that should be a way of opening up imaginative possibilities for young people. It should not be a way of closing down possibilities. And so, when young people are talking to older experts in their field, I guess I'd say, pay more attention to the things they say are possible. But if they say, something is impossible, I'd say, maybe be skeptical. Think about that. Think about the possibility that maybe things that they thought were impossible, actually are possible.
I have
So I think, go ahead.
I have a boy that lives with me, 18 years old. My wife is gone, and so I have dinner with him every night. And he is a very bright boy. And I learn more from him almost every day, simply because I am listening, and he is spewing out all kinds of interesting background facts, experiences, and I am very lucky to have him in the house with me. He's son of immigrants, and it is a marvel to realize how little I know about so many subjects, and the wonder of having this contact with youth. So whoever sent that question in understands the beauty of old and young working together.
In fact, in one of my jobs working for NASA's chief technologist, I was sent to investigate the role of synthetic biology in going to Mars. And so I got to talk with a number of leaders in that field. And one of the things that came out very strongly was that if you want this field to progress, you need to teach the young people, like in high school, about this, because they're going to have ideas that none of us that are our age are going to have, because they simply haven't grown up with the sort of same blinders. Let me take one more. I've got one more question from Haley Stuben, and she says, "How can we incorporate the importance of imagination into schools?" Which I think you could take to be you could tell me anything that you think we should change about our education, and maybe keep in mind how we don't perhaps want to repeat the status quo as we move forward. Anybody?
Well, I think teaching should be based on stimulating curiosity, on problem solving, on facing challenges and addressing challenges, rather than learning rudiments in a dry way. I think we have to change the way science, for instance, or other disciplines are taught at school. Much more on interactivity, on stimulating the creativity and the curiosity of the kids.
And I guess I'll just I'm gonna put in a plug for the arts in all its various forms, because the arts fuel the imagination, and they're certainly not more important than other fields of study, but I think that they are an essential part. And a generation without artists is going to be much poorer than one with artists. And I think that our education system needs to keep arts programs funded. I definitely agree with Fabiola that the instruction in fields like science, and physics, they need to be much better. They need to be much more engaging, because I think there are a lot of ways in which science is taught in schools, which are extremely dull, and there are ways to teach physics that fire the imagination, and we need to pay more attention to those. But yeah, I guess I also want to throw in a plug for the arts.
Well, being married to a glass artist and having actually all sorts of art books and glass art in back of me. But I think we all explore in different ways, and in trying to make teams, if you don't have someone that can sort of share the vision, whether it's in writing or in a song or in a piece of art, then how could people know that they should be on your team if they don't know what the mission is? So I completely agree with the value of the arts and the humanities. Along those lines, I'm going to questions from our audience here. And one of them says some very big problems such as climate change require very careful messaging and storytelling. And in fact, there have been a number of studies about how messaging around climate change tends to make people less willing to take action. So do any of you have ideas about how to mobilize imagination and storytelling in science to create momentum for action on things such as climate change? So we're talking more about the messaging and how to change messaging. Anybody want to take that? I was going to say, Ted, it might have to be you because you're the storytelling guy.
Well, okay, so I guess I think there is a lot of messaging. I'm not exactly sure what the questioner is referring to, but I will say that there is a lot of messaging that places the burden on fighting climate change on individuals, and that is the wrong message, because the vast majority of carbon emitted globally is emitted by just a handful of multinational corporations. So fighting climate change, the responsibility is not on individual consumers. It is on giant companies, and that will require regulation. So I think that a lot of the messaging, which I think is often funded by corporations, which say like it's up to you to put in LED light bulbs or recycle. They are trying to shift your attention away from the fact that they are the ones who generate the vast majority of the carbon. And so, I guess more narratives about what a response to climate change would look like. Those would be narratives involving things like government regulation and a carbon tax and things like that. And those are things that I think would help make a response to climate change more palatable to individuals, and then the political actions needed would have more popular support.
Thanks. Anybody else before I go on?
I think that was well said. I couldn't agree more. And but it, if I had to project what will happen to the Earth, I would say that one day it's going to burn up. And anybody working on this problem is working on the right, something that's going to help all of humanity if they're successful in any way.
Well, changing gears a little bit. and Bill, maybe this is you, just about the pace of things. Big data and smartphones mean that we can now predict the future and act upon such predictions in real time. How can narrative help us move from a reactive to a proactive society? I'm thinking that in terms of, what I think they were trying, their premise is that we have all this information, and so we should act real time. But it seems to me that making good decisions still comes down to including the information that we can now get so quickly, but realize that there's more of a big picture out there and more thinking to do. And I wonder if this comes into play in the things that you're trying to do. I have an even more futuristic one, if you're ready. Let's see. So one question comes from the founder of the Sir Arthur Clarke Awards for Achievement in relating to space exploration. And he says, and this is Jerry Stone, he says in the 1970s, Gerald O'Neill and others proposed large-scale habitats in free space. Their construction and the use of off-world materials could save major problems that we have down here on Earth. But building these structures now would be far easier and cheaper using robotic and 3D printing and other techniques that didn't exist in the 70s. So what he wants to know, what is the panel's view on such ventures with their potential benefits? And so I think he's saying, and you might interpret it differently, that now that we have 3D printing, we don't have to be thinking that we have to get our materials from somewhere else. We actually are able to use the materials we have right here on Earth, but in different ways. And what are your views on basically building things in different ways?
Okay, I'll take a stab at that. I guess I wish I had a little more context on the question, but I think that there. So building like O'Neill cylinders in space, I guess.
So that's the thing. Okay, I had not understood that. Okay.
I think that's what he's asking about.
Oh, could you maybe give people context on that, Ted?
Because I understand what I understand him to be saying. I think he's talking about these large cylindrical space stations that are spun to simulate gravity and have people living on the interior side, and I read Gerard K. O'Neill back in like the early 80s, and I definitely was my visions of what the future might look like were definitely shaped by his work. I guess, I can't say that I'm entirely sure about the nature of the question, but I think building such colonies, while I think that would be super cool. We'd probably, it would certainly make sense to get the resources to build them off planet, because rather than pull them out of the gravity well of Earth, like if you could process raw materials from the moon, that would be energetically more efficient. I don't know that like mining on the moon will be a major source of resources for use on Earth, because I think that in general, as technology improves, the cost of getting materials out of the ground on Earth goes down, and so if you're building stuff on Earth, you'll probably be better off building using materials from the Earth. If you're building stuff in space, then you'll probably be better off getting materials from space. but certainly, I guess robotics and 3D printing would reduce the need for human presence to build these things. And as for the question of like human habitation in space stations, while I again think that would be super cool, that doesn't solve a lot of the problems of people living on Earth. You will never be able to build enough of them to solve any of the issues that like the billions of people living in the global South are facing. I don't think O'Neill colonies will help. Some of the other things that I think Gerard O'Neill was interested in, like solar power stations, I feel like those are definitely possibilities. Building solar power stations using robotics or 3D printing in space, and then using them as a way to beam energy down to Earth. I guess I think those are probably still worth considering. But it would take a really detailed analysis to say with any confidence whether those would pan out.
No, I agree. And actually, it to me, when I'm listening to the things that you're talking through, so many of them are interdisciplinary. And it's about the combining of different disciplines together, where you need construction people, you need people who can think about what is the part of this that we can't just print in order to actually make the whole machine. We have about 5 minutes left here, and I just want to give you a chance to make some, closing statements. We've talked about a lot of different things during the panel, and all of them are important. They're clearly important to many people. We have a lot of questions in the chat, and it's been fascinating to read through those. And so, feel free to comment on anything that you like. I think that we're all here to understand how to build a better global future through the use of imagination. And I think it's very generous of all of you to spend your time and to think out loud in front of lots of people, answering questions that you hadn't thought about before. I think two common threads are the global impacts of your actions and the mission-oriented nature of your work. Bill, as a pioneer of venture capital, and through your United Nations work, Ted, with the global reach of your writing, and Fabiola, with the impact of CERN's discoveries worldwide, which don't happen without strong leadership and building a place where everyone is welcome to do science, which I'm understanding you're working really hard to do. So with that, I'd love to hear from each of you, maybe starting with Bill, and then Fabiola, and then Ted, with your final comments before we close our session.
Well, I wish there were more sessions like this that were well broadcast, because I think it's been very, very interesting for all of us. My thoughts are that, as I said earlier, I think the serious problem that the Earth, that we all have, is that the Earth will, in some way or other, burn up. And I think that we will definitely be going to other planets to live a different way. So that's one concept I've got that's a little large in scope, but I think we've got that serious problem ahead through many generations. I think the other we also should examine all the potential ways to mine the other planets before we plan to live on any of them. And I think that's that's a very, there are definitely some products that can be built there, some that will be brought back to Earth, certain materials that we don't even know about now, that can be brought back to Earth to make products that we have no idea about now, but we will discover as time goes on. I think our systems for where we are today are very well established in this country and Europe and Asia and so the whole world really. Let's keep our eye on with a vigilant eye on our systems, and that we don't let something happen here in the United States, particularly, that would be really bad for the world. And I think of how easy it is to look at a country like Venezuela and see how it's fallen into bad hands, and the economy has taken a nosedive, and it's not going to, it's not without getting too, morose. I think we have got to work on keeping things running pretty much the way they are running today, because we've got it pretty good.
Well, I'm sure that a global view is actually, it's imperative, and it's hard to get away from it, especially when you've seen it from far away. I think Arthur C. Clarke refers to that as well. Fabiola?
Well, I think we need to establish the right priorities. I think we need a world where collaboration prevails on competition, where the common good prevails on the individual interest, where the service to other people and to society prevails on running behind power, money, or self-establishment, and where trust prevails on fear and on angst. So I think we need to change the world and our priorities.
Fabiola, thank you. Ted?
Okay, so first I just want to say one last thing, I guess, about capitalism, and that is there's a writer, George Monbiot. He has said that capitalism is like coal. Coal has been enormously helpful in the history of civilization, but we have reached a point where coal does more harm than good. And in the same way that we are looking at alternatives to coal, maybe it is time to look for alternatives to capitalism. Then, I guess finally, about the role of science fiction, I want to quote a piece of science fiction. I want to quote Neo's speech at the end of the movie The Matrix. At the end of that movie, he says he's talking to the agents, and he says, "I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see: a world without you. a world without rules and regulations, without boundaries or borders, a world where anything is possible. What happens next is a choice I leave up to you. And that's a quote from a science fiction movie about a guy who has attained superpowers and is talking to some villains. But it is also the goal of all progressives. That is what progressives are saying to the establishment all the time. And I think we need to remember that. That is what progressives want, and that is what science fiction wants.
Ted, thank you. And I think change is hard. Change can be scary. It always involves people and collaboration, and we've heard a lot about all those things today. And so I appreciate everyone's very candid thoughts. And I'd like to just, in closing here, thank the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation and certainly the team that has put this conversation together. That is Walda Roseman, Monica Morgan, Constance Chatfield-Taylor, Lynn Neerman, and Rachel Willisco. And of course, Corey Lathan, my longtime friend and I think head of the board of the Arthur C. Clarke Foundation. I'm never great with titles, but I definitely thank Corey for including me in this venture. And the theme for our talk was unleashing our imaginations during these times of crisis and renewal, and highlighting the role that imagination can play in inspiring visionary and collaborative problem solving to build our future. I think we've seen today that it's not easy. There's lots of different ideas, and it takes longer than an hour to talk them through. I'm hoping that this conversation is the start of many conversations to come. Some will be joyous and uplifting, and some will be hard. But forward is the way that we need to go. I leave you with a quote by Arthur C. Clarke. "The limits of the possible can only be defined by going beyond them into the impossible." I'd like to thank these three people who know a lot about doing that, and they've shared some very valuable insights today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the road forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.